A probable Mercedes concept switch was frequently discussed at the start of the season. The German team acknowledged that the potential of their idea without sidepods was limited, but changing the concept during the season looked impossible given their financial restrictions. Nonetheless, the sidepods could be seen on the W14 in Monaco, and if Mercedes boss Toto Wolff is to be believed, the trend will continue with 2 big upgrades coming in quick succession in the coming weeks. Mercedes still has 2 upgrades in the works. Lewis Hamilton was 14.1 seconds slower than Verstappen, and that on a circuit that emphasises the Mercedes' flaws more than its virtues. This could mean that with these 2 upgrades, Mercedes could take the fight to Red Bull and finally challenge for a race win. The substantial improvement project in the Principality has already raised suspicions among the grid due to the cost cap. However, it appears that updates at Mercedes will continue indefinitely. "We will bring a big upgrade to Silverstone," Wolff was quoted. The Austrian had already stated after the Canadian Grand Prix that he hoped to win at Silverstone, and this now appears to be due not just to the track's characteristics, but also to the new upgrade package. "After that, we should have another one before the summer break," Wolff added. This is notable, as that summer break starts just 3 weeks after the British Grand Prix, which means that Mercedes has the new upgrades in quick succession, just in time for the Hungarian or Belgian Grand Prix. It's just that we're learning things much faster since we changed our conceptual architecture. We should be able to make reasonable steps in the next 4 races. Wolff points to the busy month of July. According to Wolff, the crew is getting a greater understanding of the car. I think we understand the simulations better. Our correlation between the simulations and what we see on the track is good. That has been our biggest problem in the last year and a half. We've seen some good performance improvements in the wind tunnel. We understand better what the car needs to go faster and what kind of tunings we need to use. So the steps we're taking are getting bigger. I think we're going well. But for now, the Silver Arrow struggled on the straights and when trying to accelerate out of slow corners. The decision to have a bigger rear wing was to fault for the low top speed. Aston Martin and Red Bull chose a wing with less downforce. The traction concerns are still present with this car, but we're getting better and better there too. The new platform we have now helps us there, says team boss Toto Wolff happily. Hamilton listed what is still missing. We need more downforce in the rear, better traction and less air resistance. Mercedes feels that the final step to Red Bull is as simple as an upgrade. And we have 2 more races in the next few races. A big one at Silverstone, the other before the summer break, reveals Wolff. If the new parts are as successful as the last development phase, Mercedes will be able to compete with Red Bull in the second half of the season. Could they be able to fight for a race win in Silverstone? And what about their opponents? Aston Martin also brought improvements to Canada. This enabled Alonso to keep on to P2 during the race. So they aren't sitting still either. Will Mercedes be successful in bringing more and better upgrades to the W14 than their direct competitors? It seems that Red Bull's level is out of reach now, certainly if they'll bring some minor updates to the car. What do you think? Can we expect Mercedes to fight for a win in Silverstone? Let us know in the comments down below. One thing is sure, and that is that Mercedes' performance in Canada was surprising and greatly welcomed by the team. Thus, Mercedes team chief Toto Wolff was satisfied with the team's improvement after Lewis Hamilton finished 3rd in the Canadian Grand Prix. "We're on a positive and encouraging trajectory," the Austrian said. "Our new car works well. We knew that Canada is one of the more difficult ones for us, and coming out in P3 is a solid result, not too far away from Max. I think he backed off a little bit at the end, but we were much closer than we would have expected. At the beginning of the year, we would have been murdered on this kind of circuit." Although Lewis Hamilton was unable to push Max Verstappen or defeat Fernando Alonso in the Canadian Grand Prix, the Briton was happy with his 3rd place finish. "Just to be consistent and fighting for a podium relatively up there consistently is fantastic for us," Lewis said. Ultimately, it was a difficult weekend for some people. If the Ferraris qualified where they should have, they would have been a bit quicker than us, and they would have been difficult to overtake. But that wasn't the case, and overall we did a better job than everyone else. We just need to work on the performance of the car, particularly at the rear. That's the biggest weakness, particularly in low speed. I couldn't keep up with those guys. We're on the right track. We've just got to add a lot more performance in the low speed. I'm forever grateful for everyone back in the factory. We've just got to keep churning away, and I'll try to keep pulling out these results. It's clear that the Canadian Grand Prix was another promising occasion for Mercedes, with the W14 confirming the great racing performance and consistency demonstrated 2 weeks earlier at the Catalunya track. Although Mercedes celebrated their 2-3 finish in Barcelona, there were fears that the features of the Spanish track, much like in 2022, might disguise some of their shortcomings. These concerns have been put to rest with the W14's performance in Canada, where Lewis Hamilton claimed another podium and remained within touching distance of Fernando Alonso. Aston Martin's upgrade package offered them a significant edge last weekend, boosting the AMR 23 and reacting to the Silver Arrow's recent development. Nonetheless, the margin between Mercedes and Red Bull and Aston Martin has shrunk dramatically since the early rounds of 2023. Perhaps more crucially, the German outfit's correlation concerns that have plagued it since the start of 2022 have been resolved. Now, what the car does on track correlates with what we're measuring in the simulations, Toto Wolff explained after the checkered flag in Montreal. And it has done that for a year and a half. Nevertheless, you have to keep both feet on the ground. Alonso in the Aston Martin is still a threat, and Max is even stronger up front. It's not about third or fourth place for me either. It's really a learning curve to get better, and then at some point compete for victories. These views backed up the post-Spanish GP assessment, as well as the big picture that Mercedes' new philosophy is the right one for long-term success. And this philosophy change has been aided by James Allison's return to a more active position in the team. This has been a significant development this season, and will become even more important for the W15's progress in 2024. However, Mercedes has already been able to make big alterations this year and instantly find performance, a good signal for the total potential of their package. Although Red Bull continues to reign supreme in Formula 1, there are grounds to be positive about the pursuing pack's hopes of cutting the gap further. So, Allison's return to the grid has been nothing short of incredible for now, and when speaking to the media in Canada, James Allison, who was reappointed as Mercedes technical director earlier this year, couldn't disguise his enthusiasm for the W14 and W15. The Mercedes engineer has been brought in to oversee a new development path at Brackley, with the team immediately realizing that an innovative approach was required following the Bahrain Grand Prix. Although it is too early to tell how successful the latest W14 improvements will be, the Spanish GP and Canadian GP were undoubtedly a source of inspiration for everyone involved in pushing the German team forward. It goes without saying that Catalonia has traditionally been a strong location for Mercedes. Canada isn't, and all signs are that the new modifications, which are simply the first stage, are getting the Silver Arrows back on track. Allison mentioned the joy he derives from working on team growth at Mercedes again. "I'm certainly enjoying it. I think it might be a big grandiose to say I'm putting all these things in place. I'm just tucked in with my colleagues, plotting and scheming what we're bringing for the track this year. And also, similarly, what we're trying to do for the next year. We've just had the main press conference, and I was trying to express what an actual thrill that is. When you've got a bit of a picture forming internally with all your fellow engineers of how that journey's going to look. And it's a bit like waiting for Christmas. You can't wait for it to arrive, and it's very exciting." So for now, arguably the most important task assigned to James Allison is to ensure that next year's W15 overcomes the challenges that have plagued Mercedes under current standards. And at this moment, it looks like they'll be able to, with the reappointment of James Allison. It just shows us all how much of an influence one person can be on a whole racing team. Just look at Red Bull and Adrian Newey's presence. Without him, Red Bull would be nowhere near the dominance they're experiencing right now with the current regulations. Let's hope James Allison can become Mercedes' Newey, so we can see some exciting racing for P1 in the coming races. After all, seeing Red Bull win everything becomes boring quickly. Fortunately, the podium battle is spiced up, and with Perez and Ferrari disappointing for now, we'll have to do with a Hamilton, Alonso and Russell battle for P2 and 3. Let's hope we'll see a P1 fight in Silverstone like Wolff promised. But first, the Austrian Grand Prix. Who do you see winning at the Red Bull Ring? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. It'll be interesting to see if Mercedes or Aston Martin will be able to further close the gap.